Hey everybody, hope all is well. Today I thought I would do a video that was maybe incorporated a whole bunch of different types of reading, types of subjects and genres, and things that I love. So I like to read across history, politics, fiction, all of that stuff, and this one I think kind of captures all of that stuff. So I thought it would be fun to do on one of my first few videos here on BookTube. So let's just jump right into it. So the first way I like to pair books is by history and fiction, putting those together into sort of reading pairs. And of course, you don't have to always read these as pairs, but I like to start with the history and then read the novel, or vice versa. Sometimes a novel catches my interest and I enjoy it a lot, and then I want to get into the history. But regardless, I'll show you a couple of interesting ways that you can do something like that. And thought I would start off with Spain and a couple of books that you might be interested in. Now Spain, I'm specifically talking about the Spanish Civil War. It's obviously fairly famous, but I don't know how many that people have read too broadly on the Spanish Civil War. But the novel by Ernest Hemingway, For Whom the Bells Toll, is a very famous novel, and something that most people know or have read. And so if you're interested in that, then a great book to read to get a little bit more background, to understand the plot, understand the characters and what kind of motivates them, their politics, the general sense of what's happening in the country. A great book to read is The Battle for Spain by Antony Beevor. He is one of the best writers of popular history. Tons of great books out there, and it's probably the most accessible for someone that's primarily a fiction person or a novel reader. And so you can basically take a good history and pair that with an excellent novel and come away with an amazing experience. And so, yeah, try that if you like. The other thing is, the other example that I have for you is this is a history. It's a cultural history of St. Petersburg by Solomon Volkov. Now, St. Petersburg is almost like a character itself. It's one of those cities that maybe has its own personality, comes to life, haunts, terrifies. It lives on its own, and it's really interesting to read a book like this that gives the sense of history and culture specifically of a city, because there's a lot of books that are set in a certain city, and that city's culture, it seeps into the novels themselves, it seeps into the characters. It's almost impossible sometimes to know some of the stories if you don't have a sense of the culture of the place. And so I'm not sure how many other cities, or maybe Moscow, maybe London, Paris, places like that where you get a similar situation. But for me, reading this was really, really interesting when you pair it with books like St. Petersburg by Andrei Biely, and then, but probably more common or more well-known are Dostoevsky's classic books that are set in St. Petersburg, like Notes from the Underground, or more famously, Crime and Punishment. In those books, including St. Petersburg by Biely, the city itself has a certain character and a certain influence over the characters that maybe you wouldn't understand if you weren't too knowledgeable about the history itself and why it exists and how it shapes the traditions of the area and affects the mental frameworks that those characters operate in. So there are so many ways and so many great histories that can be easily paired and brilliantly paired with certain great novels. So highly recommend that. Okay, the next thing that I wanted to talk about was fiction inspired by other fiction. So I don't know how common this is, but I look for this, I watch out for it, and you can find very interesting books that are inspired by earlier works, earlier great works, earlier classics. And the example that I'm going to show you today is everybody knows The Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas. It's a classic. It's one of those fun books that you sort of get to know, whether it's through TV or otherwise as a kid, and then you kind of read as a younger adult to get into the classics. And then in later life, it's something that still is a great read and is an inspiring read. And there's a book that I read that I just picked up from the library, thinking that, oh, that's interesting. It's called The Club Dumas, and it's by Arturo Perez-Reverte, a Spanish novelist. And the interesting thing about pairing these two books is I don't know how many people know about how many novels were published back in the 19th century, for example. A lot of them were published as serials in magazines or newspapers. And because of that, because of the way they were written and published and presented to the public, they were done differently than you'd typically do a novel today. In many cases, for example, a lot of the novels published serially would come with a cliffhanger at the end of each chapter, and that would be kind of a device to get people to want to read the next chapter that comes in the next publication. And so that's what, Club Dumas, that's what the author does. He tries to sort of recreate that sense of a cliffhanger on every chapter, and so it's a super fun read. And this is an interesting one for people that love books, because this is about a bibliophile. It's about a person that sort of tracks down rare manuscripts, and it's a tale of intrigue, and the characters sort of resemble the characters in the Club Dumas. So that's a kind of a cool way to look at books. If you can find particularly classics that have inspired modern fiction or modern novels, different takes, different ways of exploring those earlier novels' voices. Those can be super awesome. Okay, so the next category of pairings that I wanted to talk about was, I think maybe the best way to say it is point counterpoint. And I don't have both of the books because one of them I actually borrowed from a friend. But the two books are Into Thin Air by Jon Krakauer and The Climb by Anatoly Boukreev. Now, these two books are these are nature books. These are disasters, I guess you could say. It's about expeditions to Everest. Now, these two stories were set quite a while ago. Still a fascinating story, and Everest continues to be in the imagination of people globally, given the desperate attempts people take to climb that mountain despite the incredible risks. And I think Into Thin Air and The Climb are two of the original kind of books about disasters on Everest. And Into Thin Air by Krakauer, he sort of made some more suggestions about what happened on the climb, sort of assessed some blame, talked about his team, the team he was with, and some of the other teams that were climbing the mountain at the same time. And then this one, The Climb by Anatoly Boukreev, was kind of his experiences on the same trip up Everest, and his experiences in helping save some of the people that were trapped in the blizzard that caused all the chaos, and then also sort of the book generally, and his editor, they talk about or respond to Krakauer's in Thin Air and some of the allegations that Krakauer made. So it's kind of interesting. I think you do find books like that fairly often, where you have a writer, especially when you're talking about things like natural disasters, where you have multiple participants in the event writing books from their perspectives. And sometimes they clash, sometimes they're directly antagonistic. But it's just interesting, because it's really interesting how one event can have multiple competing experiences that sometimes different voices, different writers can express in different ways that creates a very interesting reading experience, and that's pretty unique. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you feel so inclined to check out some of my earlier content. And if you are so inclined to subscribe or give this video a thumbs up if that's what sails your ship, would appreciate that. And all the best. I know your time is the most important thing you have. So to the extent that you made it to the end of this video, I appreciate that greatly. Take care, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.